Hi, everybody, and welcome to Big Joe's Journal. My name is Joe Tilden, and I am the host of this program. Well, we're taping this TV show on the last day of summer, the year 2020, and it's probably the fastest moving summer that I can recall in my 87 years on God's earth. Actually, there's really not a heck of a lot going on in the usual summer activities. A lot of cancellations, because of COVID-19, and a lot of unusual things. For example, our two political conventions were, to say the least, rather unusual. Something very, very unique. It's the first time a nominee has not stood before the convention and accepted the nomination in front of cheering throngs. Of course, on the Republican side, the incumbent used the White House and one of the lawns in front of the White House, so he had his crowd cheering him on and so forth. But very, very unusual, and also a very, very unusual type of campaign that you don't have or shouldn't have anyway, the big cheering crowds and all that. Of course, the incumbent president needs his stooges there to cheer him on and so forth. He's already, of course, making excuses for what happens when he loses the election, and he's left some question, well, if he loses the election, is he going to leave the White House? Well, a lot of people are talking about that, and the fact is that he has to. Because as of 1 minute after 12, on the 20th of January, 2020, he will no longer be president. So if he's still in the White House, he's trespassing. And the new president, President Biden, can, order him evicted. And so the Secret Service agents that are supposedly protecting him now will probably be the ones that will remove him physically if he doesn't go on his own. But I don't credit Trump with many smarts, but I think he's got smart enough that if he loses the election, he's going to call it fraud and everything else and lie about up one side and down the other. But I think he's smart enough to know that he wants to get out of the White House rather than be trespassing in there and stand a chance to go to jail. Of course, he's going to go to jail eventually anyway when the federal courts take a look at his tax returns and how he's cheated on his income tax. He may be a guest of his, well, it won't be his anymore, but possibly of the, I would say the Justice Department, but, we'll also say the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So we'll see what happens. This past week, one of the longest-serving justices on the Supreme Court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, passed away at the age of 87. That gives me something to think about. Justice Ginsburg, of course, as you know, for a number of years has had a lot of medical problems, but she hung in there as long as she could. I think she was going to hang in there, and hopefully, when Biden was elected in November, she stayed on long enough, and then she'd step down, and he'd get the opportunity to appoint the new justice. But she came up just short, and consequently, their old Dumbo has already got a couple of candidates in mind. They're going to try and push through a nominee. He's got his stooge in the Senate. There, Mitch McConnell, who refused to do the same thing with Obama 4 years ago, is now saying, well, he's reversed his course now. That time he said it's up to the new president to appoint the next justice, when he wouldn't bring up Mr. Obama's nominee for the Supreme Court. And the result was that Trump came in and got two nominees. Now he's going to have a third. And all of a sudden, old Mitchie there has changed his mind. Well, let's do it now and get it out of the way, because I think he knows himself that come January, Trump is going to be gone. So they're going to rush through a nominee. Dumbo has tried to steal some of the thunder from the Democrats by saying he's going to nominate a woman. And it'll be interesting to see whom he comes up with. And how long it's going to take a Republican-controlled Senate to confirm her. I imagine it'll be in short order. But, well, we'll see what happens and how it works out. Actually, again, as you know, politics is not fair. And if you want to control the agenda, you've got to get out and get the votes. You get your people in office. The Democrats don't control the Senate, therefore they're not going to be in much position to stop or slow down this nominee. The majority leader in the Senate pretty well has the power to set the agenda. And he's going to set the agenda so that they're going to fill that spot as quickly as possible, and then go on to November 3rd. And come November 3rd, of course, I think the way the country is going, that it'll be a Democratic landslide. If you look at all the polls, some of the polls, of course, don't exactly hit the nail on the head. But Biden has a lead in just about every poll in every state. The exceptions, I believe, being South Carolina and Mississippi, and maybe Alabama, and possibly Alaska. But the other 46, he's got a pretty good lead. And all of a sudden, Trump is going to help Puerto Rico, trying to get that Hispanic vote after going 3 years and downplaying Puerto Rico and saying all kinds of bad things about him. And all of a sudden, election coming up, by golly, he's going to help him. It shows what a four-flusher he is, what a liar he is, what a crook he is. We know he's a pathological liar, no question about that. But I'm sure he'll have a nominee, he said, by the end of the week, and I'm sure he will. He'll dig up somebody. Kind of wonder if it's going to be one of his former lady partners. God knows how many of them he's had. But we'll have to wait and see. He's got to nominate somebody that's credible. He's going to have any chance of getting it through at all. And there should be some Republican senators that still have a conscience. You know, people like Mitt Romney. And there should be a few others in there saying, hey, wait a minute. This appointment should be up to the next president, whoever he is. Well, it's pretty obvious. Trump figures that he doesn't have much confidence in his own ability to be reelected. And that shows why he wants to ram it through, because, hey, let's get it done before Joe Biden takes over as president. And I think he's looking at fact that his poll numbers are way down, and that people have finally caught up with him and realize what a liar he is. Look at your blue-collar workers whom he promised so much to and didn't deliver. Well, your union people now have got a union man running for president on the Democratic slate. And I think you're going to see states like Pennsylvania that went for Trump, Michigan that went for Trump 4 years ago, Wisconsin. I think you're going to see them switch over and go Democratic this time around. In fact, I think Biden will carry about 40 states. States that he probably won't carry. All states where racism is very, very high. South Carolina, Mississippi, Alabama. I'd say Georgia's a toss-up. Probably Utah. Utah is very, very staunch Republican. Oklahoma. I think Texas is a toss-up. And possibly Alaska. But other than that, I think it's going to be pretty much a Democratic landslide. So the first public debate, and I believe it's going to be on Fox, is going to be next week, when Biden and Trump will go face-to-face, and we'll see what happens. I think Mr. Biden is going to just kind of kick back and let Trump make a total fool out of himself. Be the easiest way to do it. Just counter all his lies, his fibs. For anybody that's in the military or has been in the military, to still support Trump, you got to have your head examined. After all, he said what he thought of you. Those who are willing to put their lives on the line for the country, he thought you were stupid. For those that gave their lives for this country, thought they were dumb. Just the way he handled John McCain. John McCain was an authentic American hero. Many, many times more man than Trump could ever hope to be, or even come close. And look at the way he put down McCain. I mean, right there, that should sound an alarm. And to see him get off a helicopter flown by a Marine and take a Marine salute, you know, it's just disgusting. Just disgusting. But, well, we haven't got much more of him, thank the good Lord. And he will be gone by the end of the year. And 2020 becomes history. It's a year which is going to be very, very well remarked in history. And future generations are going to look back the year 2020 as a year of transition, when things change. Are we ever going back the way we were? I doubt it very much. I think there are going to have to be some whole-scale changes. And one of the big things where we're going to have that whole-scale change is in the field of education. Burlington High School, the building is closed. You got over 1,000 students. What are you going to do with them? You're going to educate them all on Zoom, on computer? No way. I think what they've got to do in Burlington, they've got to find other buildings that are safe in which to house these students and have that relationship from teacher to pupil, personal relationship of teacher to pupil. That is more meaningful in promoting education than having somebody sitting there watching on a computer and dozing off or half paying attention. That's not education. We're going to bring up a generation of kids that have been shorthanded. It's unfortunate that schools had to close in March, and the kids that graduate in 2020, when they go on to college, many of them are going to find that somewhere along the line they've been shortchanged. A number of colleges, of course, have what they call a DAP program, D-A-P. That's Delayed Admissions Program. This is for kids that have applied to college but can't, their academic grades in high school don't quite meet the threshold that that particular college requires. And so they can go to a summer program, which they should have done this past summer, but they were non-existent because of COVID-19. And they make up what they missed and bring up their grades to try to meet that standard to be admitted into college. But as I've said before, and I think again, we're going to have to look at the way our public schools operate and also our private schools. And there's going to have to be a different method of teaching. It's not going to be in the classroom and lecturing in the classroom. There'll be some sessions in the classroom, some sessions in the lab, but your school year is going to have to flip-flop and begin around, say, shortly after the 15th, 20th of March, run through the summer, and conclude around Thanksgiving or shortly thereafter. Many of your classes are going to have to be outdoors. And the field trips, which are a rarity now, are going to become an important aspect of your teaching program. You're going to have work in a classroom, of course. So maybe a class, say, would spend a day or two inside, and then you're outside. You're taking field trips. You're going to places like the Dead Creek Wildlife Refuge. You'd be going to the Natural Audubon Center up in Huntington, or some of the state parks along Lake Champlain and other parts of the state. For a history teacher, there's a lot of history on the Revolutionary War in this neck of the woods. You got Fort Ticonderoga. You got Mount Independence in Orwell. Mount Independence was formerly known as Rattlesnake Mountain because that particular area of the state of Vermont, particularly in West Haven and that area, is very well known for its rattlesnake population. But you have the Hubbardton Battlefield, which is there. There are a number of other battle points. For example, go up to Champlain Islands, where you've got Fort St. Anne, which was the first fort built by the French as they begin moving down Lake Champlain after settling in Quebec, the province of Quebec, and Montreal, what they call Mount Royal in English. They begin looking south, led by Samuel de Champlain, who was a great French explorer. And the first French fort that was built was on Isle La Motte, and they named it in honor of St. Anne. And of course, as you go further down the river, you have a number of other French forts built till you get to Fort Ticonderoga. Originally, that was Fort Montcalm, built by the French. And it was built so as to be a block to the British colonists, which the French feared were moving further and further north. You have Mount Independence in Orwell. Mount Independence was known for being a Revolutionary War encampment, and it was to set up as a block against the possibility, this time, of a British invasion coming from the north. But of course, no battles were fought at Mount Independence. At one time, there were over 2,000 colonial troops stationed at Mount Independence. If you go up there now, you're going to see the remains of the old hospital that they had because many of them were hit with a flu epidemic, cold winters that they had up there. And of course, when the British finally did capture Fort Ticonderoga, General St. Clair, realizing that his troops were outnumbered, withdrew, went over through Hubbardton, down through Castleton, and escaped down to Bennington to participate, of course, in what would later be known as the Battle of Bennington. And the troops that were left to slow down the British were a company of Green Mountain Boys under Seth Warner and a small regiment of, well, you can't really call them regulars because the colonial army was mostly made up of farmers and volunteers. But a small group under the leadership of Colonel Francis, who lost his life at the Battle of Hubbardton and is buried in the Hubbardton battlefield. And of course, if you want to go north, the University of Vermont itself, founded by Ira Allen, brother of Ethan Allen. And you have the, what they call the Ethan Allen Homestead in Burlington. Now, whether Ethan Allen ever lived there or not, we don't know. We know that one of Ethan Allen's daughters apparently lived there, and apparently she, as history is telling us now, she had a couple of slaves to wait on her. Another one of Ethan Allen's daughters was Fanny Allen. And Fanny Allen, of course, was went to Montreal, became a nun, and what was Fanny Allen Hospital in Colchester was named after her. Well, Fanny Allen now is part of the UVM medical complex. For a period of time, it was known as the Fletcher Allen Medical Complex, and that's what it was known when I had 2 cancer surgeries up there, and 1 heart surgery. It was known as Fletcher Allen. Well, the first one, when I had the heart thing, it was known as Mary Fletcher, because at that time it had just taken control of what had been DeGrosbean Hospital to bring that into that complex. And when I had the 2 cancer surgeries at that time, it was known as Fletcher Allen. And now it is known as the University of Vermont Medical Complex, because it comprises what was the Mary Fletcher Hospital, the Fanny Allen Hospital, the Bishop de Gosbian Hospital, the Jean Mance School of Nursing in Burlington itself. And as you expand out across Lake Champlain, it has the Champlain Community Hospital in Plattsburgh, and I think another medical center down around, somewhere down around Ticonderoga. Here in Rutland, of course, we have the Rutland Medical Center, which is our hospital here, and they also have outlets around. One in Castleton, one in Shoreham, Brandon, Killington, East Dorset, and I believe in Paulet. So there's a lot of room for education to make that switch, and it's going to, it's going to be a different mindset. Well, when do we graduate? We can't have outdoor graduations. Well, probably not, but a number of colleges graduate in December, January. Middlebury, of course, their midwinter graduation house takes place at their famous Snow Bowl. But that wouldn't be possible for every high school. But if you can't have it outdoors in the middle of winter, you can have it indoors or have it as we did in 2020. Each student come up as an individual or come up in their car and get their diploma and so forth. But our thinking has to change and our approach has to change. And that's what 2020 has brought about. Because this COVID virus is like the flu, it's going to stay with us. And apparently it's a lot more effective and a lot more serious than the flu. As our country approaches over 200,000 dead since March. Since March, nearly 200,000 people have died from this COVID-19, the coronavirus. And we still don't really have a handle on it. Some schools are starting to come back. As you know, the NFL is playing as though nothing happened. There's nobody, there are very, very few fans in the stands. The Big Ten, which postponed their football season, now is going to start up again. They're going to be going at the sometime in October, I believe. Instead of playing a 12-game schedule, they're going to play about an 8 or 9-game schedule and then have a championship game. College football is big business in a lot of these towns. And so to boost the economy, I think a lot of pressure was put on the Big Ten to say, well, they're doing it in the Southeast Conference, they're doing it in the Atlantic Coast Conference, they're doing it in the Big 12, which is now only 10 teams. Why can't we do it here? Well, I think they watched Notre Dame. In Notre Dame's first 2 games, they beat Duke, and then they absolutely crushed South Florida. That was a total mismatch. A game they never should have played. And they see them working out all right. You have a few members of the student body in the stands. Stands aren't full by any means. And the Big Ten sees that working out. So they have decided they're going to take a shot at it. And the only major conference now that has still postponed football is the Pac-12 on the Pacific Coast. But they have other problems. Not only are they battling the coronavirus, they're battling very, very serious fires. A number of people have been killed, people have lost their homes, whole communities have been destroyed. People have lost all of their worldly possessions, gone up in flames. And it's going to be many, many years before they recover. You know what's rather ironical? They desperately need water on the West Coast. Southeastern part of the country, they've got more water than they can handle. You've got Sally that came in with their high winds and destroyed pretty much everything in its path. Now they've got this other hurricane called Beta, which is going to come ashore somewhere in Louisiana. And apparently it's going to take a sharp right turn, and it's going to pretty much saturate Mississippi, Alabama, parts of Florida, Georgia, parts of South Carolina, then head out to sea. Up here in the Northeast, we're undergoing a drought. We could use a good, steady, full day of rain. But somewhere in this country where you desperately need water, you don't have it, where they have more than they can handle, causing disaster down there. Mother Nature has not been kind to the continental United States. And out on the West Coast, still suffering from fires. Chances are those fires are going to burn pretty much until you get a steady snowfall or they get some heavy rains coming in sometime, they say, in November. You're hoping November. Meantime, the NFL goes on. Watched a couple of games yesterday, one in the new sports stadium outside of Los Angeles. You never know, there was fires raging all around them between the Kansas City Chiefs and now the Los Angeles Chargers. It used to be the San Diego Chargers. And of course, Kansas City won it in a field goal. Very good game. And last night in Seattle, at one time they were talking about having to probably move the game because of the forest fires, but they played it last night and the air was clear, meaning that the fires have moved further to the east and are hitting in the eastern parts of Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, down that area. A national tragedy. Mother Nature hits and hits hard. But nothing is surprising in the year 2020. We've had enough surprises to last us a lifetime. Enough tragedy to last us a lifetime. We'll never recover from it. So consequently, we've got to look at doing things differently, being able to cope. And one of the big things, of course, along with COVID-19, flu season is coming upon us. And as you know, every single medical profession is urging people to get a flu shot. And I'm going to get a flu shot on Friday. Better safe than sorry. Get that flu shot. It probably will not totally prevent you from getting the flu, but if you do get touches of it, it won't be as bad, nearly as bad as it would if you didn't have that protection. And also, if you get the flu, your immune system is going to be weak enough so you're setting yourself up for getting this coronavirus. And that's the last thing you want. So, listen to the medical professionals. The so-called doctor in the White House doesn't know what he's talking about. He sets himself up as knowing more than the professionals do. And that's an example that he's dumb. When you have to promote yourself as being brilliant and everything else, you're really stupid. And this is just a smokescreen because you yourself know you're a dum-dum. And certainly the occupant of the White House, well, we know he's a dum-dum, and I think he knows it too, which is why he sets himself up as knowing more than our medical experts do. And I know his lackeys in the White House, including his puppy dog of a vice president, Pensy, of course, back him up. They're bootlicking. Pensy doesn't have to bootlick too much more. He wanted to be vice president. His buddy Trumpy picked him again, so he doesn't have to bootlick now. He's got what he wanted. But we'll see where it goes from there. In the meantime, the last few hours of summer, it's a little bit chilly out there, but the last few hours of summer, see if you can get out and enjoy it. The summer that, almost never was. The summer where we set some records. One of the records that we set, the hottest July on record. And, those people that deny climate change, they're fooling themselves. It's coming. It's here. And we've seen that in July. We're going to see even hotter summer next year. So with that, may Almighty God, in His infinite wisdom, continue to bless these United States of America. God love you. Don't forget to vote. Ballots are coming out. Vote. See you all next week.